It's calm, it's safe, there's no problem at all, and I think it's a good time to travel to Russia because of the lack of tourism.
If you're people who haven't regularly traveled to places that are blocked,
Sanctioned, some images might shock you. There are 200 with visas.
buses, flights, and then whatever you spend here, depending on how long you stay.
So the visa issue cost me about 11 times yes.
Greetings from Kazan, which is considered the third capital of Russia, and welcome to another video, although it's a bit different from what we're used to. But anyway, I think it can be very interesting for all of you who ask me how to travel to Russia. In the previous video, we got to know the iconic Red Arrow train, which has connected Moscow and St. Petersburg for more than 90 years. We then walked through the St. Petersburg Metro and Yusupov Palace. I initially considered including this video with the previous one, but split them due to their different topics. I share the testimony of Jesus, a Spanish tourist who has come to Russia and is going to tell us everything in detail. How was the visa process, the flights, the routes, and what to do about money. Jesus, besides being an experienced traveler who has visited many countries, also had my support here in Russia in case he needed anything. So I don't want this to make you think that it's an easy or comfortable trip. You just have to keep certain things in mind when planning your journey. If you keep these tips in mind and stay organized, you can have a great trip to Russia. This video is different from our usual content, but many people asked about it, so I hope it's helpful. If you have any questions that were left unanswered in the video and you want to ask them, leave them in the comments. I'll be happy to answer you. And now, let's not say anything bad.
And let's get on with the video.
Well, after this tour around St. Petersburg, we are at Dom Sovietov, the House of the Soviets, and I'm accompanied by a Spanish tourist. He must be one of the few. Jesus, how are you? Also, a true traveler who has his blog, Vero for Travel, we met at the House of the Soviets, but I think this is going to be interesting for all of you. Also, to hear about his experience crossing the border and organizing the trip to Russia. It's his first time here, so, well, enough said. Let's go to a cafe to have something, a Soviet coffee, why not? And there we'll go into more detail. First of all, tell me, what do you think of St. Petersburg so far?
I love it because it's like two cities in one, the Tsarist era and the era of the three Russian revolutions. Ultimately, you see it in the city's buildings.
Look, the city center has nothing to do with this. This is on the outskirts, the House of Soviets building. If you can see the difference, if you take a look, all those buildings look much more like the ones you can find in Moscow. Well, of course, Lenin, here is the statue of Lenin, which can't be missing. It's the tallest statue of Lenin. Here in St. Petersburg, and as Jesus says, two cities in one here. So, did you like it? Did you not like it? You in Russia? Impressions? Was it as you imagined? And how is it? Everything is calm? You've been able to walk around easily?
It's calm, it's safe, there are no problems at all. And I think it's a good time to travel to Russia due to the lack of tourism.
Yes, that's good. You can use it.
No, there are no crowds. There are no crowds, prices are quite affordable, and you can stay in a good hotel at a reasonable price. And honestly, it's a good time to come to Russia.
Well, look, it says there, workers of the world unite, the sickle and the hammer, and there, 1941. Like I said before, off camera. But for those who don't know, this building was finished just months before the siege of Leningrad. And well, it was used as the headquarters of the Red Army during the siege. Look, how impressive, the columns rising up, reaching all the way to the sky. Oh my, Jesus wanted to add something. When we talked about Lenin earlier, yes.
He wanted to say that. For those of you interested in Lenin statues, you can find one. At the Finland station, which was the place where he arrived, and the typical image of Lenin speaking to the masses from the train.
Here, next to the House of Soviets, in relation to the siege of Leningrad and World War II, when this was the headquarters, you can still see bunkers that were used to place artillery and defend the Red Army headquarters.
Here's the typical.
We came to finish filming this St. Petersburg walkthrough, Jesus and I, to a very peculiar place, which is full of Soviet arcade machines from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And well, I've been playing, I think you have them over there. If you like Soviet stuff, how could you not be interested? Well,
You have.
Look, even with the old comics, yes, show it there, so the camera can see it. These are arcade machines that existed in Soviet times. If you're interested in this, you should know that you can find them both in Moscow and in St. Petersburg. And well, a promise is a promise, right? And I want you to tell me, Jesus, a bit about your experience arriving in Russia. There are a lot of people who ask me, hey Victor, what's it like to get to Russia? How can I go? Because of course we already know that direct flights are cancelled, so for example going through Turkey is really expensive. So specifically, how did you make this trip to get here to St. Petersburg?
Let's say we have three options from Europe to fly to Russia, which are Turkey, Serbia, and Belarus, but none of them are really options, let's say, if you live in the European Union. Therefore, what we have to try to look for are geographic locations close to Russia, and in this case, we have two types of trips. First, the city, for example, of Tansk, which during World War II was known as the Free City of Danzig, from which we can go directly to Kaliningrad by bus. And once we are already in the Russian Federation of Kaliningrad, we can fly, for example, for 40 euros to St. Petersburg or Moscow, even if we book it on short notice.
Of course, it's much cheaper than the 900 euros, or at least that much, for example, from Istanbul, Madrid Istanbul, or Spain Istanbul. Yes, and then...
Alternatively, we can choose Helsinki or Tallinn. These two cities are connected to St. Petersburg by bus. Let's say I took the outbound trip via Tallinn. I've already done Tallinn-St. Petersburg, and for the return I'll do Kaliningrad-Gansk. That is, tomorrow I will fly from St. Petersburg to Kaliningrad, and I will visit the old city of Königsberg.
We were already by the canal? I was there recently?
Yes, I saw the video with the torpedoes and the ship. I watched it and plan to visit it too.
Yeah, take advantage of it. Yes, it's really cool.
And, well, it's kind of the most direct and affordable option I've found to get there.
Of course, since you said tickets from Helsinki already cost 90 bucks.
Not 90 euros?
That?
Let's say the bus from Helsinki to St. Petersburg costs 90 euros, but from Tallinn, I don't remember now. Between 3 and 40 euros, I don't remember exactly, practically half.
And your experience crossing the border, I mean, because, as we've said before, is this your first time in Russia? And maybe... to impress a bit, especially given the current situation. No, with all these sanctions and everything, but anyway, what I was getting at about the border, did you have to wait a long time? How was it? In my case, it was pretty quick, of course, but I do know that sometimes you can, just to let people know.
Well, it's true that I already have a lot of travel experience and have been at borders, like between Lebanon and Syria during the war. So, no, in that sense, I haven't had a very strong culture shock. But if you're people who haven't traveled regularly to places that are blocked or sanctioned, some images might shock you. On one hand, we have the Estonian police who delayed the bus for about an hour and a half with the passport control.
Yes, you were in Estonia, an hour and a half.
An hour and a half in Estonia? From what I've read on the internet, there are people who say it could be for political reasons. I don't know, but well, we were there for an hour and a half, and it was about 1 in the morning.
And there was no one else.
And on the other hand, on the Russian side, well, we were there for about 2.5 to 3.5 hours, more or less. Because on the bus I was with 20 Ukrainians, so they divided us into two groups. On one side there were Lithuanians, Latvians, and Estonians, and Spansky, which was me, and on the other side were the Ukrainians. So it took a while because they were checking the Ukrainians' visas and other things.
Of course, as you already know, in total, it takes about 3.5, 4 hours. You were there, of course.
Plus the 3 hours or so of travel, it's about 7 hours.
I mean, you have to be careful with those things, right? And get your visas. Because sometimes you can get through in an hour and a half, but suddenly a group shows up. Or I don't know. Well, you have to do a more thorough check, obviously, because of the situation we're in. And you can end up spending quite a bit of time, but to be honest...
There's never been any kind of problem. I mean, in the end, it's just a security check.
But in my case...
They didn't check my suitcases, I just sent them through a checkpoint and machine.
Not on a conveyor belt? Yes, it was an X-ray machine, or whatever it's called.
That's right, and not. And in the end, the buses are pretty comfortable, you have outlets, you can also watch movies. I mean, it's not bad at all.
The company. We're not advertising since they're not paying us.
But there are two companies?
Yes, there are two companies. I can share more details privately, but they're not hard to find.
That's right.
And then yes, you go back to Poland, to Gdansk, you go with a different Polish company. No.
That's right.
Yes. Okay, so just so you know, there are different companies. And well, another important thing is the visa issue. I would like to ask...
Yes, to ask you because...
Let's see, you might be one of the first Spanish tourists. you'll be among, I don't know, just to say something, among the first 1,000, right? Because it's actually only recently that the electronic visa has come out. Jesus is coming with an electronic visa, the e-visa. So tell us a bit about your experience, because I know you've had not back and forths.
I mean, I want to give you a bit of context for those of you who tried to come to Russia before 2019, before the pandemic. The previous e-visa allowed you to visit either Kaliningrad or St. Petersburg. Yes, at this moment, the electronic visa is open to any oblast in Russia, meaning you can go anywhere in the Federation. In that sense, it's not restricted. I wanted to mention that so people would know. You understand?
That you can go anywhere in Russia, even if you want to go to Vladivostok.
So, the visa issue cost me about 11 times. 11 times, yes, because every time I filled in the information, it told me something was wrong. In my particular case, I didn't understand the difference between registering my name in Latin and in English, and the difference was that one had an accent and the other didn't. My name is Jesus, accent on the U, Martinez, accent on the I. It took me a while to understand that.
Also, regarding the photo box issue, since they request a digital photo,
I remember you wrote to me.
well,
It's true. I recommend the typical photo you take in a studio because you're going to need a perfect photo. And you shouldn't smile, you shouldn't show your teeth, you have to look straight ahead. The nose shouldn't have a shadow, there shouldn't be a shadow behind it, there shouldn't be anything behind you that alters the photo. I mean,
they're particular, but after going through the process 11 times by the second time, you know exactly what to do.
let's say,
Any advice you could give for, maybe, someone doing it for the first time, like patience?
that's the first thing. I managed to do it, I announced it, and I'm someone who's used to doing step work, so I do them constantly. And well, patience, you'll get there and just stay excited. This is an amazing country, and I think this is the perfect time to get to know it.
Yes, like you said before, right? There's not that overcrowding from tourism, obviously for a reason.
For obvious reasons.
For obvious reasons, a lot of tourism has been lost. And maybe, well, for those who like to visit places like this, more on their own, without big tourist groups and all that. It's like you said before, and I notice it too. It's nice. You can go at your own pace. What are your impressions? I mean, aside from your personal feelings, did you come here with any kind of respect or caution because Russia is Russia? For first-timers and those who've watched me before, whether it's your first or 100th time, if you're ready to take that step, did you feel any respect, maybe inspired by the bureaucracy or the current situation? In the end, what did you find? And what's your overall impression?
Of course, honestly, I got rid of my fear in Belarus. I visited Belarus before, which is basically Russia, so all those inner fears I got rid of back then. In that sense, I don't have it anymore. But it's also true that I didn't know anyone who had been to Russia. After the pandemic and the sanctions, I didn't know what I was going to find. It's not easy either, not being able to use your Visa or your MasterCard. Exactly.
When it comes to money, how are you managing? In cash?
Of course, in cash. The problem was also, this is also a piece of advice. I arrived on a Sunday and the banks were closed. And the tourist offices, exchange offices, almost all of them are closed too. I spent an hour searching for exchange offices naturally.
And this is St. Petersburg.
Isn't it?
What if you leave? Because at the border checkpoint there was no exchange, nothing.
Nothing else. It was 2 or 3 in the morning and no.
Of course, nothing. No, forget it then. And getting rubles, a lot of people ask me about this. I don't really know. Maybe you'd have to look into it. But getting rubles before arriving, I think that
due to the sanctions,
someone must bring them to you.
that's it. It must be. You came with 0 rubles, of course.
But how is that related, especially to euros?
Of course. Let's think that someone who works in the currency exchange business won't have rubles, because in the end it can fluctuate a lot. And there isn't a demand from people interested in traveling to Russia, so I think it will be quite impossible or unlikely to find rubles in Europe.
Of course, and, well, I think we've given a pretty good overview for anyone who wants to come. I'm not sure if I'm forgetting anything or if you want to add something. If there's anything else on our minds, maybe the latest thing.
Yeah, because in the end it's an ideal moment. Because both Moscow and St. Petersburg before the pandemic were tourist cities. In St. Petersburg the cruise ships used to arrive. The prices were quite high. And now you can practically stay in any hotel, between 20 and 40 euros a good hotel.
20 to 40 euros for a hotel, which may be in Spain. How much would that cost you?
Well, from 60 to 80.
60 to 80.
About half. We're talking.
Yes, of course, the purchasing power compared, not in Spain, and here you can really feel it. Yes?
The thing about restaurants too, going to eat at a good restaurant and so on, in the end the prices are quite affordable. So it's a good time to visit Russia. I mean,
Visiting Russia isn't very expensive. No.
no, yes.
You can find the pieces of the puzzle. No, because the visa was 50 euros, the visa 50 euros, then the plane ticket. Maybe to one of these neighboring countries.
Yes, round trip, let's say 140 euros, 140 euros.
Round trip. By bus? More or less by bus?
Let's say it's 30 and the others are 40, so maybe it's 200. Yes.
200 with visa, buses, flights, and then whatever you spend here during your stay, but you say it's not very expensive. Okay, well that's great, Jesus. Well, thank you very much for appearing in the video. Like I said before, it'll be nice not to add subtitles. Finally, a Spaniard who speaks my language, and well, Jesus is a great traveler. He also has a blog. We met in Cyprus.
That's right.
We met in Cyprus when I was coming back from northern Cyprus. I was coming back and then you went, or maybe it was the other way around. Actually, you encouraged me, you planted the seed saying, hey, you should go to Cyprus. There are good connections from Armenia.
Is that right?
It happened spontaneously. We met. Jesus has a blog, but anyway, I'll put it in the video description.
Yeah, whatever.
But for travel too. And you have a blog, right? Where you write. Although, well, I don't know if you still have it. You were telling me that, of course, since you have it. But there you can find a lot of information about how many countries you've been to. You're already a traveler.
I know, well, about 70. Okay, 75.
75 countries all over the world, all over the globe. And the ones that are left, right? Well, that's it. We'll leave it here, and I hope you enjoyed this walk. With this information we're sharing with Jesus, take care. We'll see you in the next video.
All right, until next time. Bye.